Hey, let's perform. Let's perform. Let's perform. Let's perform. Let's do a podcast. Let's do a podcast. Let's do a podcast. Let's do a podcast. Podcast. Let's do a podcast. Let's do a podcast. Let's do a podcast. Anyway, who's the kid that keeps doing push-ups and wants a shout out on YouTube? Do you know who that is? What's his name? Ethan or something?
Yeah. Shout out to your push-ups.
Yeah, quit. He's like, I'm doing the push-ups until I get told hello or whatever.
Push-ups, though.
You should keep doing those. Because look what happens if you don't. Things I learned last night. Yeah. All right. Let's get into the episode then.
Have you ever heard of Ingrid Robeyns?
Probably Robins.
I think it's Robeyns.
I would guess.
It's spelled Robeyns.
No.
Robeyns?
YNS?
Yeah.
Okay. Robeyns?
Maybe Robeyns. This is her. Let's play a game of...
Ooh. She is a editor at a newspaper.
Interesting. She seems to me, and if I were to see just this picture and I was going to judge the book by the cover, I would say she's like I
think she's British, right?
I would say she's a founder of like a weird, kind of creepy biomed company.
Sure. So
or
to
biotech
me,
company.
Okay, so for audio listeners, she is wearing like a trench coat. Well, we only see like shoulder up, but she's got like the flap of the coat up over her chin a little bit.
Yeah.
And she's looking back over her shoulder. She's got glasses. She's probably middle-aged woman, you know?
Yeah.
And she's got graying hair, but not gray.
Yeah.
And she looks a little bit like the current prime minister.
Oh, I can see that.
Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I can see that. Here's another photo of her. I don't know if this gives you any more of an idea.
Same
what she
vibes,
does.
to be honest. It's just her doing her, her face on her
an editor
hand.
Is
I
your
think
vibe?
an editor. I think an author of some sort.
Does this change your opinion at all?
Okay, is she a speaker? No, I think this could be this. This all could be the same.
Okay, what about this one?
You're just doing the thing. Well, she is British though, or she is European.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
that's
definitely
what I thought.
Yeah.
Tim, just don't show me 4 more pictures.
Okay, sorry. I'll stop showing you pictures of her. Yeah. So you're close. She's an academic.
Okay.
She's a PhD. She works at the University of Cambridge. Another Cambridge. I guess I didn't connect the dots. So this was
those did look like professional, like.
Yeah, professional.
Would be on the back of a so she's probably written, if she's got a PhD, she's definitely written papers.
Yeah. And she, what's interesting is like, she originally got her career route in academics was economics for a long time.
Okay.
But she kind of got disillusioned with economics and then shifted to philosophy and specifically ethics. And so she went through like, what are you looking at me like that for?
I just feel like you're choosing topics that set us up for some crash outs, and I'm not excited about that. She was studying economics and then just felt like maybe she should look at ethics. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good setup for this, but okay.
And I could tell you more about her history, but honestly, the whole reason to talk about her is a couple years ago, she wrote a book that has become a pretty significant book.
Okay.
A slightly controversial book, and it is called Limitarianism, The Case Against Extreme Wealth. She... What's going on? You go.
I just feel like you're really setting us up here, man. Okay. All right. And for those listening, it's a piggy bank, but the piggy bank is freaking huge. It's got a small, little, tiny pig face on it.
Yeah, they're just a
Limitarianism.
giant...
Oh, you know what? I think I've heard of this concept. Okay, but I'm okay. Let's get into that.
Yeah.
The case against extreme wealth, and it should be noted, should be very clear when people talk about like wealthy people. Everyone's always like, "Yeah, but my friend's dad is wealthy." No, if you know that person, they're not wealthy. I'll tell you that right now.
If you know
if
them,
you're listening to this,
they're not wealthy,
and you know them, we're not talking about them.
They're not the same kind of wealthy. Yeah. So this book is exactly what it sounds like. It started as a research paper. She wrote this research paper, very heady, very like dense philosophy and economics, because she has both of those experiences. And that got a lot of interest in like academic circles. And so she got approached by publishers to be like, hey, do you want to make this for a general audience? And so that's when she put out this book. And the book is interesting because you kind of expect reading it that it's going to like propose like a whole new like economic model. But what's interesting about it is it's not really, hey, this is a better like economic model like communism or capitalism. This is like a moral philosophy.
Okay.
Of like, is it right for there to be people who are extremely wealthy? Like, is that morally okay?
Okay.
And towards the end of the book, she proposes some like political measures and some actual like economic theory to it. But the majority of the book is just like an ethics book, really, which is very interesting. It's an interesting angle to take. And I think it makes it, if you read the book, I think it makes it a little bit harder to like write it off wholesale. I think there's a lot of people who...
Did you read it?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people... We've talked about this book before.
We have.
I read it like 2 years ago, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I read it a long time ago, like close to when it came out.
I didn't read it.
But the people who discount it or like are vocal about how much they disagree with it, they often compare it to communism, which shows that they didn't read the book and they don't understand what it's about.
Or communism.
Also true.
They just like big, scary words.
Yeah. Communism has kind of become like the big bad wolf for capitalism.
And again, we're not saying pro-communism. We're not saying that. But I'm saying that like what you think is communism is most likely not.
I don't know what you think communism is,
but I can almost guarantee your definition of it is wrong.
I'm pretty sure what you think it is not what it is. Yeah, so limitarianism, like a brief, I guess, top line overview of it, is basically this idea that there is a moral limit to how much wealth someone should acquire. And that limit is, it's interesting because she defines, and we'll get to this number later. She defines like.
Does she give a number?
Yeah, she defines what she thinks is
the
political moral limit, but she also defines what she thinks is like she defines what she thinks is the moral limit, like the ethical limit, where people should choose to not go over this line.
Okay.
But then she defines a political limit where she thinks like government should move to legislate to this number. And she gives a few reasons on a few ways you could do this, but the concept is not. It gets compared to communism but it's not communism because it is not the government taking over the means of production and controlling industry and then distributing the money and resource to the people. It's
evenly,
instead,
right.
It's still capitalism. It's just there is a upper limit. The comparison that is often made is where communism would be. You're driving down the highway and the government owns the road and all the vehicles on the road, and then it just kind of gives you the right to drive a vehicle. Limitarianism is the government owns the road, but everybody owns their own vehicles. But there is a speed limit, and you can't go over that speed limit because it's dangerous to everybody else on the road. That's limitarianism, is essentially a wealth limit.
Okay.
And so she gives like 6 moral reasons that she thinks that we should have a limit on this. What are you doing? I move around. I move my body.
Let's get you a headset then.
When
buddy.
I move my body, I gotta move the mic to be near my
Speaking
body.
of moving bodies, dude. Okay, so my comedy special that I just filmed this weekend, I was not a little annoyed, but just like they gave me a small stage.
Yeah.
And like the lighting guy was like, hey, if you step too far forward or too far back, you'll mess up the lighting on you. Mm-hmm. So you can really only move side to side.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, oh. And then I literally only had like a 4-foot.
Yeah.
Like it was a very small platform. And so I was a little thrown off by that, I think.
That's really interesting.
So
I used to move a lot whenever I like spoke on stage.
Yeah, let's talk about you.
Give me a second. We can get back to you. But let me talk about me for a second. I used to move a lot when I would talk on stage. And I actually got a mark. Like I didn't get a word of merit. And the reason the amount of like doc I got, whatever on the score, the reason I didn't get a word of merit is because they said I moved too much. And like, they were like try to sit still more. And it kind
What?
of broke me. Like, I feel like for years after that, like I was kind of like trapped behind the podium.
But why? That's weird.
Yeah, it was a weird thing to nitpick on. And then I like finally broke that at some point in the middle of college, got back into being like able to be like comfortable and mobile. And then I got my job at Summit Park and they were like, hey, we do IMAG. You're moving too much. They can't keep up with you. And then I had to like get back to being still.
Sure.
It was weird.
And I don't move a whole lot. I mean, like I don't do, I'm not like back and forth the whole time, but I do kind of, pace back and forth. And I like the freedom and ability to move around.
Yeah.
And some of my bits, I'll like lean out and do the whole thing. And it's just, I really did feel like I was just kind of like, okay, I've got 4 steps that I can stay in.
Those little things like you can kind of get in your head, like especially if they're like,
I joked during the sound check. I was like, I'm filming my special on the top of a ladder right now. Like, that little yellow part that you're not supposed to stand on. Like, that's what it felt like, where I was just like, okay, I guess I'm here.
Yeah. How'd everything go?
It went, I mean, that's what I'm saying. There were parts of it that were, the shows themselves went well.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. They were great crowds. We sold out both shows. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Right? I thought that the next day I would be like, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm. Have you felt that before? Because this is like the 5th special you filmed?
No, this is my 3rd. I guess
if you don't count Blind Date.
I guess if you don't count the Blind Date or Dry Bar.
Yeah.
What I mean.
Yeah.
Because the Blind Date was a different project entirely.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's kind of what I mean too, is that there was a lot of production issues with the Blind Date, but the Blind Date went so well and was also just like, I had never done it before.
Yeah. And it was like, it wasn't a traditional special. So you're kind of taking a big swing no matter what.
Right. This is like, I'm spending more on this than I did on my wedding, and this has to go well. And also, the crowd is laughing, but I know that these jokes have hit harder somewhere else before. Like, and I guess and I know that I'm overanalyzing it for sure, but it's just the thing where you step off and you go, was that the best? Like, was that the best show I've done?
Yeah.
I don't know how it could be whenever, like, because all the other shows, I'm not up there thinking this is a comedy special that could change your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't know how to perform the shows
Shut that off
without thinking that, for real.
Yeah.
And so what I keep describing it as is the feeling of like, I just filmed the comedy special. The next day, what I feel like is that I just took this massive risk. Mm-hmm. My team is down by 2.
Yeah.
I've just kicked the game-winning field goal.
Yeah.
The ball has left my foot.
Yeah. And you're just...
And now I just have to sit in
watching it
that
through the air for
few 2 months.
Yeah, that's
because I don't get to see the footage. I haven't even seen any pictures yet.
Yeah, that is brutal.
And it's like it's just there, and I don't know if I shanked it or not.
Kind of watching it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
and
crazy.
So that I didn't expect to feel that. I don't think.
Did you feel that after the Galois?
I know, because you know what though, the Galois, I was only 4 years into comedy at that point.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't going to get picked up by anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew that it
like
wasn't
the dream that maybe it would, but it's like.
But I didn't know what I know now about the industry.
Yeah.
I didn't have actual connections to make that happen. I didn't have a manager then. I didn't have
a manager then?
No, I did that all by myself.
I mean, yeah, I guess I
hadn't signed with a manager yet. I hadn't signed with.
I guess I didn't realize. I mean, I would have known that then, but no, I didn't realize.
Yeah. And we just kind of did that ourselves. It was at the Galois. The production team was there. I paid for that out of pocket myself as well. I had to Uber drive to pay that off.
Mm-hmm.
But
that was also like what, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. So that was
8 years ago. Yeah,
paying for that out of pocket was different than paying for it out of pocket now.
Oh, for sure, sure. And that's where it's like, yeah, this thing's paid off. Like, we're good. But also, like, I don't know if I'll make that money back. I definitely didn't make the money back on the first special.
Yeah.
And this is like where it's like, but this has more at stake, where it's like there's more people involved who want to see the money back.
Yeah.
And
there's stakeholders.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, man, I would love to talk to other comics and figure out how they felt the day after they filmed the comedy special.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel this way with the Dry Bar because I didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel this way with the Blind Date because it was like, that was an experimental idea it was just fun that we pulled it off.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think I was hoping to feel the way I felt after the Blind Date.
Yeah.
Where it's like afterward we had a rap party and we all hung out and it was all fun and all that stuff. Literally after the special, like we went back to the hotel, and like my parents were there and a couple friends, and I felt like I was just sitting there where I was just going through like, did I tell this joke correct? Did we do this? Like, is that the best?
Yeah.
Like I don't know how to turn that off right now. So anyway,
and I'm sure like you probably like during the show, like you hit a punchline and you're like, well, that didn't hit as well as last week. And then like you have to go on to the next one.
Yep.
While that's still in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the audience was more lit than usual so that we can see them on camera.
Yeah.
So I'm like seeing people's full reactions.
Which is a little different.
Which is also kind of jarring the whole time.
Yeah.
And also the makeup lady had to come dab sweat off me so many times during the filming.
Yeah.
Because like it was hot in Nashville.
Yeah.
And so she would just have to come up and I would have to stand there.
Yeah.
Dabbing sweat off while the audience is sitting right there. And then I would just be like, all right, let's get back into the jokes. Like it's just, it was different. I didn't know, I think for the next one now I know what more to expect.
Yeah.
But I think I'm sitting here going like, man, I hope my nerves weren't reading on the camera.
Yeah.
More than I wish that I had more confidence in it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that when I get the special back, I'm like, oh, it's great. You know?
But yeah, you got these like.
But I have that little bit of like I don't know how that went.
Yeah.
And I don't like that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true too. Like you've done this set so many times. So like, you know what it's like when it is like.
When it's like hitting.
Yeah. Nobody else knows that. So somebody else might see it and be like, that was incredible.
Yeah.
But you're like, it wasn't. Yeah.
Oh, in the first show, there was 2 people in the front row who just weren't laughing. And I was like, we switch them out? What's going on?
Why are you here?
Why are you here?
Out. That's
real.
Weird. Yeah. It is so weird to me. Like people, I mean, I guess sometimes you might not get the joke, but like go into a comedy show and not laughing at all is crazy.
But also like you're at a special taping.
Yeah. Like pretend.
You're a participant. You're an actor in this.
Yeah.
Participate.
But also part of it is, and I don't know, if, like we have a bit that we've done recently of like, thank you for your genuine laughter. But like, I do think like there is something about like having a sense of humor where it's like, you just gotta like sometimes just laugh and then like you like learn to enjoy things more, you know? Like even if like you don't actually, you know what I'm saying?
I don't understand why you're trying to make this like a weird youth pastor moment. But I'm not. Sometimes you just gotta enjoy things more.
I'm not trying to make it a weird youth pastor
moment. You have to smile yourself in the mirror and trick yourself into having a better day. It tricks your brain. It's for real. It does, like.
Whatever, man. That's not what I'm trying to say. All I'm saying is sometimes people come into things with bad attitudes. It's like, that's why you didn't enjoy that. Because
for sure, yes.
But if like you just loosen up a little bit, like you're gonna like it more.
Yeah, which is the message of the show, which is like, hey, lower the bar for everything in your life. Like, you'll have a much better time.
Yeah. So maybe you should lower the bar for your expectations of the special.
Maybe I should. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, so it was just different, and I'm excited to see how like. But by the time this comes out, hopefully I'll have an edit back. But I don't know.
May.
Yeah, maybe I should have an edit back by now. I don't know when the release was. You guys will find out, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can join my email list. Is the easiest way to find out. Just so you know.
Where do they do that?
PaulRuddTheActor.com.
Nice.
Wherever. Just join my email list, and then I'll send out an email blast when the special gets a home. You know.
Yeah. Man, could you imagine? Had there not been that snowstorm, flying to Alaska at 4 a.m. the next day after that? Like the way, like...
Yeah, I was originally supposed to do the special and then fly to Alaska the next day. And also the Alaska show was just fine. But it's like, no, that would have been terrible. That would have been awful.
Yeah, that would have, yeah.
But I do think, I do now sit here go, like we did 2 shows in one day. I do think having 2 days would have made it better.
Oh, interesting. Why?
Because I would have been able to sleep between the shows and had more time to make the second show a little better. This one was like
adjustments.
All adjustments we had to make were made in the 45 minutes between shows.
That is true.
You know?
That is true. Yeah.
So that's another thing. I think that, hopefully next time when I film a special, I'm able to do like 4 sold out shows. So I can do 2 shows one night, 2 shows the next night, and we just have 4 shows to choose from.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, that was
interesting. Well, I'm excited to see it.
Anyway.
Cool.
Who's the kid that keeps doing push-ups and wants a shout out on YouTube? Do you know who that is? What's his name? Ethan or something?
Yeah. Shout out to your push-ups.
Yeah, quit. He's like, I'm doing the push-ups until I get told hello or whatever.
Push-ups, though.
You should keep doing those.
You should keep doing push-ups.
Because look what happens if you don't.
Also, there is somebody else.
Look what happens if you do.
There is someone, while we're shouting people out, there is someone on Spotify who keeps commenting that you made fun of their dad for being bald. And they said they're just going to keep commenting that until you acknowledge it. And I don't know if you remember making fun of someone's dad for being bald. I think they said it was at like a youth conference.
So keep doing those push-ups. To be clear, it did not acknowledge whatever that was. I don't know, dude. Here's the thing about me making fun of people at my shows. I don't remember any of you.
Yeah.
That's not true. I remember that one. I remember that. Yeah. He was bald and at a youth conference. I remember that real clear. I made fun of him. He was at a youth conference and he was bald.
I do remember that. But I think I made fun of him.
I think I made fun of him a little bit. I think he had a kid.
Okay.
I did a blind joke at this comedy club. We can throw, I'll send Robert the footage. We can throw it in. The person in the front row was like, my wife is blind. Front row. Yeah. And I was like, and you sat up front? Your date is blind? Is that what you said? And you sat up front? Shows the same back there, I think, right? I love how you guys don't want to laugh at that. All right? That's really funny, and you guys are like, ah. And no one in the crowd laughed. I was really mad at that. I was like, okay, guys. I was like, the show's the same for you back there. You know, I don't know. We were joking around. We're having fun.
Yeah.
It's also the joke I did where someone said they were a homesteader, and I was like, yeah, that's what rich people do. They buy a bunch of land.
Yeah.
Rich people are always trying to figure out how to get away from society. They buy a bunch of land. They build a home out in the middle of nowhere.
So she gives 6 reasons why she thinks being super wealthy is
back into the
unacceptable
topic after 24 minutes. Jeez.
It wasn't 24 minutes. Hey, thanks for watching our show. If you like it, a great way to help out is by being a Patreon supporter. Doing that helps make this show possible, but it also gets a lot of perks for you. You can get every episode a week early, ad-free. You get access to a Discord where you can meet a lot of other people who love the show and actually hang out with Jaron and I every month on a hangout. And we're also in that Discord chat all the time, talking with people, talking about episodes and just random stuff in life. It's super fun. There's a way to get birthday messages, a free gift, merch discounts in there. So there's a lot of really great reasons to be a Patreon supporter. You get a lot of benefits out of it. And it also makes the show keep happening. So if that sounds great to you, you can go to support.tilln.com or tilln.com/support, or just tilln.com and search around until you find the links and become a Patreon supporter. We really appreciate you doing that. But if not, right back to the episode, right? She gives 6 reasons why being super wealthy is morally not okay.
Okay.
The first is for the protection of democracy and political equality.
Okay.
And under that, there's kind of 3 things. And so basically, she says that extreme wealth concentration undermines any democracy. And it does it in 3 ways. First, the super rich can buy influence.
Yeah.
And so they can pay for political power by funding candidates through like campaign donations and things like that, making large donations to
I feel like this is just crash out bait. I feel like this whole episode is you just being like, campaign funds? And I'm just supposed to be over here in my head. I'm like, Citizens United needs to go away. I don't know, my God, you know. And then like I'm just over here like, I'm not gonna crash out. I'm not gonna do
crash out. I believe.
But we're also only on 0.1 A of 6, and I'm just over here being like,
but it's not just campaign donations. It's like actual donations to party,
right?
Or lobbying,
to
create legislation that works in their interests. The other way that they can,
did I hear a thing that this in 2025, 40% of lobbyists were on behalf of AI?
I have not seen that, but I would believe it.
Well, we should probably verify that before we just include it, but I'm pretty sure I heard that stat, which is terrifying. Also, most Americans, almost like I forget the number, I don't want to quote a number on this, but it is exponentially more Americans are more worried about AI than they are excited about it.
Yeah, this is from citizen.org. 1 in 4 federal lobbyists now work on AI. Yep.
Okay, so 25%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Wow.
you said
I said 40.
Yeah, so
maybe that's where I was getting the 4 from.
1 in 4,
maybe 1 in 4. My bad.
But
so it is
still,
lower, but still that's
a
still
significant
high.
amount. Yeah,
25%.
Yeah, that's crazy. So they can pay for influence in the democracy.
Yes.
That's the first. The second is they can control information. A lot of the ultra wealthy, they control by ownership.
Yeah.
The social media platforms where we get our information, the news outlets where we get our information, and even like publishing houses where we get our information.
Right.
So they have like actual control over what sort of information is inseminated in our society, but also they can fund advertising campaiges to influence opinion, influence thoughts, and they can fund research to influence the opinions that they want. And so these can be kind of what do you call it, like subversive methods to controlling what the public believes, and you do that by paying a lot of money to do that. And the third is kind of interesting. It's actually the threat of autocracy, because there is this documented risk that billionaires historically in nations across the world have aligned themselves with autocrats, and they use their wealth to help secure power for the autocrat, and then the autocrat takes over control of the government. We see this with Putin. We see this with figures like Xi Jinping, and then they give handouts to their billionaire allies who helped fund their rise to power.
Yeah, no, buddy. I know. Yeah, that sounds terrible. This is the first I'm hearing of this.
So
I hate that you did this. I don't know why you did this, dude.
No, I think it's a good.
This is torture. Because I think I said in the last couple episodes, we're trying not to do this. We're trying not to be like, hey, man. Like, I want our show to be an escape from how terrible stuff is. And you're like, actually, here are the 6 reasons this is pretty bad.
I did think about that while preparing for this episode. But I have, since reading this book, I have for a long time been like, in academic circles, it's become pretty big.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's big enough. Like, I think more people should know about this idea.
Yeah.
I feel like when I tell people about limitarianism, people are like, libertarianism? And I'm like, no, I'm not that. not that. It's not that thing. Not that thing.
When you do that, do you think that's funny, or what do you do?
What thing?
Sorry. I'm sorry.
It's so brutal.
I know. I was trying to joke with you about it, but it was too mean. It was way too mean. I'm sorry.
It's kind of funny you say that, because
is that funny to you? Jeez, that's so. I'm so sorry.
It's really funny you say that, because on the way back from lunch, you got a phone call.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in the backseat of the car listening to you on this phone call, eavesdropping to your private conversation.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, this guy's being, I said, this guy. I was like, dang, Jaren's being way nicer to this guy than he ever is to me on the phone. And I was like, well, that's a pretty good sign that, like, we actually are friends. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a sign that we're not actually good friends.
Well, I'm not
like,
mean to you on the phone.
No, I just think, like, I do think it's interesting hearing people engage with people that, like,
you never had a fight with your wife, and then you guys go to the grocery store, and she's nice to the person at checkout. You know what I'm talking about? And she's like, "Thank you so much. You have a good night." And I'm like, "Where was that attitude when we were just talking?
20 minutes
Did that
ago?
ever happen to you?" No, it's just like we.
No, I'm just saying it's interesting seeing people engage with people who are like, because like I know the person you were talking to is someone like you're relatively newer in the friendship with them.
Yeah.
And so it's like we have a deeper friendship, which means you're ruder to me.
But okay, did you listen to the? I think that if your and I's text messages got leaked,
Gosh.
Career is over.
So done.
Like, done. I mean, like, neither of us would have jobs.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing, is that in the proper context of our relationship,
Yeah.
like, we can say whatever, and we know that this
Yeah.
is not a serious thought, and
Yeah.
this is not a harmful thought.
We don't
and
have
this
to like
is not-
clarify it with each other.
Exactly.
Like,
But it's also exists in that context.
Yes.
If you and I were to post some of those things on social, that would be like, hey, why are you doing that?
Yeah,
You know?
for sure.
And that's the improper context
Yeah.
for those kinds of jokes or those kinds of things to say to or about a person, right? We would never do that because that's inappropriate.
Yeah.
Right? And so the problem is, I think a lot of people don't have the friend group chat or don't have a friend to share that space with. And then it does leak into Discord and Reddit and different corners of Twitter
locations.
where it's like you see a horrific thing happen in the news, a horrible accident or a horrible thing, and you're processing that with your friends. And in this context, that might mean a joke about that thing that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But if you were to put that on Twitter, that's like, hey, that's not the place or time for that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the way that I talk to you.
Yeah, it's knowing the audience.
Right. But also, I hate so much about you that I'm trying to shame you into being more like me.
I figured if I treat you
Your
worse,
mom
you would
called
change.
me when you got accepted into Evangel. Your mom called me. She said, hey, I was looking up other kids that got accepted into Evangel. I found you on the portal. She says, hey, we're looking for a mentor for our son. Because he plays in the park with his friends that they're being followed by the government.
Yeah.
And we're really hoping he grows out. He is a senior. Yeah, you know, you guys are the same age. You're a couple months older than him.
Fully grown.
But it's really weird and we want you to mentor him. And I was like,
change him.
I was like, I guess
for
this amount of month.
Podcast with him for this amount of month.
So she supports. She's our sole Patreon supporter.
So Jaren's been making $32,000 a month to make me different, and it's not working.
It's bankrupted your parents.
My parents are in so much debt to Jaren.
All right. So anyway,
so her second reason that she gives is
we've made it through point one.
No crash outs. Kinda. All right, is ecological sustainability and climate justice. So what she says is that extreme
woke
is
oh, they care about the trees.
She says that extreme wealth is incompatible with a planet that is currently facing a climate crisis. And she says that because the super rich, they have disproportionate ecological footprints compared to the rest of the society. What is interesting is like, if you look at the CO2 is the easiest thing to measure. There's more of impact that they have. But CO2, what's interesting is if you look at the worldwide average, the global average in terms of like our impact every year, in terms of like our CO2 emissions, is most people in a single year are roughly 4 tons of CO2 that they emit in terms of just like our
consumption,
use of electricity, our vehicles, our transport. That's the global average. The richest
individuals. 4 times?
Individuals. When we look at the wealthiest people, the averages are crazy. The top 10% is about 21 tons a year, where the richest 1% is 70 tons, or is approaching 70 tons. This is the trend line that we're on. Because
these are 2030 predictions, though.
Yeah. So in 1990, it was 56. But what we do know is the wealthiest, the 1%, they are traveling on private jets constantly. They're traveling on yachts, they have multiple large estates, and they have large corporations that they operate to that have a large impact. And that is the other.
The corporations we're attributing to the individual, right? That owns it.
It is interesting
because that could skew the numbers.
She isn't so. In these type of
I'm
stats.
trying to be fair. I think what I get frustrated by is the number of people who will discount, like if that's the way they're measuring it, I don't think that's fair to attribute to the individual.
In these type of stats, they are saying just the individual.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
In terms of their personal actions.
But people will try to be like, yeah, but that includes all their companies and stuff. That that doesn't, that's not the same.
No, this is just their personal action. And I guess I guess potentially you could probably, because private jet flights are in there, and so a lot of those flights, they are doing business for that flight, but they're also doing other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like, so it's kind of hard. There's probably a gray
When people
line
get mad
in
about
that.
Taylor Swift flying her private jet, I'm like, what's she supposed to fly Delta?
Yeah, and let's be honest, like you would too. Like if you had a private jet.
Oh, I'm not talking about that. Yes, obviously, but I'm saying like, could you, like, is she supposed to create pandemonium in the airport?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's not possible for Taylor
Right.
Swift. Like that's not a realistic world. Yeah, that's true. The other thing, because she does separate, so she separates it. So the second level of this is investment impact, and so she says that the global emissions from the investments of the top 1%
Right.
takes up 41% of total global emissions.
Right.
And so that comes from all that. But she also talks about resource reallocation, because she says that the surplus money held by the wealthy does not go into the well-being of the collective of humanity. And so right now there is a global urgent climate crisis and there's all this wealth that's being hoarded by the wealthy that could be used to fix these problems.
Right.
And so because this is just kind of sitting in their bank accounts, this is not that like we have capital that could be used that is not being used to solve a major worldwide problem.
For sure.
And she also talks about just the use of natural resources. The ultra wealthy, through their companies, are burning through a lot of natural resources, both like trees with deforestation, and then like mining and all sorts of resources like that way, and natural gases and things like that. So they're burning through a lot of natural resources, significantly more than the average population through their investments. But that is kind of through their businesses. So to your point, that's different.
Yeah.
Her third reason, and this one's really interesting, is the argument from moral desert. And so what she means by that is no one truly deserves to be wealthy, because the arguments that you make for someone earning their wealth can all be attributed back to, well, all of these things were not of your own accord. Even if you went and you're an entrepreneur and you started a business and you were really successful, and all of that truly could be assessed back to like your own skill and your own capability as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, those skills and abilities that you have were a lottery. There is a social lottery.
Okay.
That you were born to the parents you were born in the area you were born in, kind of like you mentioned that comic in a recent episode of like, this is easier for you because of who your dad is.
Right.
So there's that, but there's also like the natural lottery, where it's like certain people are born with different talents, different levels of intelligence, different energy levels, different health capabilities that you can't take credit for. Like you were just born as the person you were born in with the skills and abilities you were born with.
Sure.
And there's also this, there's this concept. What is this concept called?
Privilege.
There's this concept. I don't know if there's a name for this. But there's this concept that the first 1,000 days of life are the most important days of a person's life. So it's about your first 2 years, roughly. Like a little
no
over 2
pressure,
years.
dude. You're about halfway through your son's most important time of his life.
Because what's so interesting is 80% of your brain development happens until you're 3 years old.
Okay.
And so a person's
and that's
parents,
why your wife goes, that's okay. That's okay. We went and hung out with Tim's family. Finally, I had to stay outside in the car, but my wife went inside and FaceTimed me. And no, every time that their son does something, like he like rolls over or like bumps his head on something, Bree swoops in and goes, "That's okay. That's okay."
Well, she doesn't swoop in. She, from across the room, says that's okay, because that's a thing. Like they respond to, unless they're like seriously hurt, the way they respond to that kind of stimulus is your reaction. Like you are their, and so it's like,
and she goes, "That's okay, that's okay." So me and my wife picked that up as a vocal stim, and it has slowly morphed, because it started with us being like, "That's okay, that's okay," and then it went to, "That's okay, that's okay." So now if we bump our, like I hit my shin on the coffee table last week, and Reagan went, "That's okay." And we pretend that that's how Bree was saying it. You know what I'm saying? It's
that's
more.
So insane. Brooke. Yeah, Brooke is
saying it.
I think it's Brooke.
Brenda? Is your wife's name Brenda?
But in those first 3 years,
That's okay.
So just so you know, that's what she sounds like to us.
those first 3 years are vital.
I love that Tim always wants to move on. Here's the thing. Tim is willing to make fun of his own son on this podcast, but Tim is so scared of his wife, who doesn't listen to this, by the way, who will never know unless I clip this on social media, who will never know.
So
Tim, you're so afraid right
80%,
now. I want you to know.
80%.
I want you to know. I can feel your pain right now, and I just need you to know. Say it with me.
That's okay.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Things I Learned Last Night. If you like the show, you want to support us, we've got merchandise that you can get, and it's good stylish stuff that I made. I put a lot of work into this stuff, so it's great to find other TILLN fans in the wild and be like, wait a minute, I know that shirt. Yeah, we would love for you to do that. You can pop over to shop.tilln.com, or there's a QR code, or there's a link in the description. There's plenty of ways to find it. We promise we made it super easy. So thanks for supporting the show, and thanks for listening.
So 80% of a child's brain development happens in the first 3 years. And so much of that development hinges on the behaviors of the parent. And so like the type of toys that the child has access to, the environments that they're put in, do the parents talk to the child a lot? Do the parents read to the child? The type of diet that the child receives, is the mother breastfeeding, on the environment, the care, like the emotional environment that they're in. So much of that happens in the first 1,000 days of a person's life, and it's hard to say someone can take credit for where they are because of that.
We understand that.
And then there's this, there's what she calls social debt.
Is this part?
This is still part of this third point. The moral dessert. She calls it social debt, and she says no one becomes super rich alone. And so she says that they do this, but they rely on public infrastructure. That they get to use to create.
That is the most annoying thing. I live in California, and people have, even just saying that, some people go, ugh, or have like reactions to. Mm-hmm. But what's frustrating is that all these tech companies, and even Elon specifically, start in Silicon Valley. And they take advantage of the tax incentives and the infrastructure that's been created by all of those companies in Silicon Valley. The networking, the connections made through government, all the different subsidies, all those things. They take advantage of those things early in their startup, right? And then once it's time to start withdrawing money, they move it to a tax haven like Texas, so they don't have to pay taxes into the system that helped them create what they are doing. And I think that that's wrong. I think like just objectively, like if you used our if you moved into my small town and you used our resources to help build your business, then you also used our resources with the promise of investing some of the return into our city. And I don't think that that's unreasonable. For the state to, but they paint it as that way. It's, it's crazy. The state's trying to tax me at this level. It's like, it's not though. And maybe we should have explicitly signed the contract on that earlier, I guess. Because it was implied that we invested in this for the future tax revenue of your larger company.
Later in the book, she talks about some of the ways you could create this system and enforce it. And one of the things she actually talks about is what you're talking about right there. And she says it's kind of interesting when you look at most societies, like especially capitalist societies in the world today, they have really strong borders in terms of keeping poor people from coming in. But they just let anybody take capital out. And she says that the problem is, like you said, that capital was built off the resources that this country created.
And it's the same thing.
And the people don't get to benefit off that.
It's the same thing I talked about. I was just talking to a guy about like free buses, right? How Kansas City made the bus system free and the streetcar free. And how whenever Mamdani in New York says that he wants to make the bus system free, everyone's like, it's just a socialist handout. But what you're not understanding is that from a city planning perspective, right? Like if we're working on this as a collective to try to make Kansas City great, one of the things that we want to do is we want to increase the workflow in the city limits. We need more people who can work inside Kansas City limits, right? Part of what we need to do is lower some housing costs so that more people can live here, and then by living here, they can contribute to the businesses, and we can get tax revenue from that business action, right? Another way to help increase our revenue is to pay for the transportation for people to come here from the suburb to then work here and increase our revenue. So for every dollar, for example, that we put into the bus system, we get $3 back. So it'd be like if I was like, I got to pay $700 for a flight and hotel to get to the show, and at the show I'll make, a couple $1,000s or whatever. Then you would go, that's a waste of $700.
Yeah.
And like, it's not though. It's a business expense. It's an investment to get to a place where I can then recoup that investment.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting frustrated by is the number of people who treat, and of course I'm not saying like, oh, government's great and there's no fraud and there's no abuse or there's no misuse of funds or there's no waste, right?
Yeah.
But I am saying like to imply that any dollar spent is waste is just ignorant.
Yeah. It's looking at a lot of these things that
and that's not a crime.
It's looking at a lot of these things that they're like face.
Man, I'm looking at the state of the world and all I can do is be like,
That's okay.
So anyways, she says that the public infrastructure, the legal systems that were in place, the property protections that exist are all centuries of human innovation and government-funded research. She gives the example of GPS. She says a major part of Google's success is Google Maps. And Google Maps exists only because the government invested in GPS, the government invested in the internet, and those were massive expenditures that the government spent on that Google was able to get rich off of. And so the owners of Google got to become really rich off of.
The government is laying fiber cables because they're starting to treat internet as a utility.
Yeah.
And that benefits internet companies.
Yeah. And so that level of extreme wealth, even if you could say...
I just don't understand how anybody looks at it. Like, this, anyway, conversations are impossible. Keep going.
That success is built off the back of a lot of other things that cannot solely be attributed to that one person's capabilities or talents.
Right.
So to say that they have the moral right to what they earned or because they put the effort forth, you can say maybe, they did some things that do deserve something, but do they deserve as much as they gained? And she would argue no. And then her fourth point is economic efficiency and declining marginal utility. This is really interesting. So these are two sides of this. And so basically she says that it's wasteful for the ultra-rich to become ultra-rich because there is this certain point where accumulating more wealth doesn't do anything for changing the quality of the life of the wealthy person.
Right.
So she gives the example of if you have a person, say like they're like a single mother living on one income that is a minimum wage income, if you gave that person $100, that helps a lot. Like that can go towards food, that can go towards bills. That makes a big difference. But if you give that $100 to an Elon Musk,
he'll turn it into $1 billion.
That is not noticeable.
That's also what I hate. Oh, wait a minute. Crash out incoming.
Oh no!
Oh my gosh! When people are like, if you give a poor person $100, they'll waste it. But if you give it to a rich person, they'll turn it into $1,000. And that's because you're a dumb. If you give a poor person $100, they will spend it on things they need.
They will spend it on survival because that's what they have to do.
And it's the same thing where it's like, man, I make a good living. I'm not complaining at all. My wife and I, like, we're working hard. We're paying off our debt. We're doing our things.
Yeah.
But we're at the point where it's like there's not a whole lot left over at the end of the month. We're putting money in savings, of course. Yeah. I would love to be able to put more into savings.
Yep.
But at the same time, you get shamed for not doing that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, just go earn more. Oh, yeah, I wish I would have thought of that. I was just dumb over here. I was just so stupid. I should have thought of that.
What is wrong with me?
But that's what I'm saying is that, that's not a crash out. We're good. We're good.
She says
I'm really holding it in over here, dude.
She says there's a point.
I hate you for this. Is this payback for the April Fool's episode? This is crazy you chose to do this.
She says that there's a point.
For 2 weeks in a row, you were like, here's some graphs and some science that neither of us understand, but I'm going to pretend to understand it. And then this week you're like,
kinda.
Yeah. So do rich people deserve it? And I'm just over here like, yeah,
Do rich people deserve
and you're
it?
like, actually, one of the arguments is that they're taking more than they're giving back, and I'm like, I hadn't.
So
I've never heard
the
anyone
argument
say this.
is that there comes a certain point
Right.
where it doesn't change your life at all.
Sure.
What does another vacation home do?
Of
What does
course.
another jet, a bigger yacht? Like none of these things actually improve your life that much. Where that same amount of wealth, if you distribute it amongst people who are in the bottom half of the population, it makes a massive impact
Sure.
in their life. And so
If you're talking about wealth distribution, people are going to shut you off, though. Hold on. So keep talking.
So she's saying that those living in extreme poverty, these sort of, it is hoarding wealth that could actually make a big impact in a
Right.
society. And the argument here is that a society where the majority of people have all of their basic needs met is a more productive society and a better society to live in, not just for the people at the bottom who you've increased their lifestyle. It's
Right.
better for everyone because everyone gets to live in a society where
I mean, I think there's so many things that when we talk about like why is the education system kind of going downhill, and it's part of it's like, oh, it's the parents.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, well, if you look at the poorest neighborhoods, like those parents are not able to be present.
Yeah.
Like they're just not able to be.
Yeah.
Because they're working
They
two
have to.
jobs.
Yep.
And even like the older kids in the household have to start getting jobs.
Yeah.
And and that is a way that decreases. There's a book called Dream Hoarders, which kind of talks about this as well. But it talks about like your kid having the free time to play on a sports team, which then opens them up to more scholarships, is a whole different level of privilege.
Yeah.
There are kids who are athletically gifted who would love and could take those scholarship spots to increase their earning potential, and maybe change their lot in life, but they don't have the after school time to play on a sports team because they have to go to work.
I watched a video recently on YouTube about the Winter Olympics.
Yeah.
How they're increasingly becoming a rich kids talent show.
Yep.
Because all of those sports specifically are very expensive sports to get into. And so the people who manage to become successful in that, they usually come from money.
Yes.
Which is a shame. And
I'm not trying. I don't want to be like I hate rich people.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be like that. It sounds like you are, but
no. So the next reason she
do you
gives,
hate me?
we're not.
What if I told you that I'm rich?
We're not talking about you.
What if
You're not that rich?
What if I told you I've just been playing humble this whole time and that my dad is the CEO
Rockstar
of Delta Airlines?
So the fifth reason she gives is social stability and reduced crime. So she actually makes the argument, which I think is a valid argument through a lot of research, is that inequality has been linked to increases in crime, bullying in schools, actually mental health issues, corruption, and then just like general discontent in a society because of that gap. With the rest of society. And she actually, what's interesting is she ties this back to the last point. And she says, this is why you see so many wealthy people building bunkers in New Zealand.
Right.
Because they know that the society that they're building is
so unequal.
Yeah. And historically,
where does that go?
This gap widens. It ends with the people going for the heads of the wealthy.
Right.
And so the wealthy are finding places to hide for when that situation unfolds instead of actually solving the problem. And that's so odd. And she says that this is crazy because if they could just change their mindset a little bit where they aren't accumulating and hoarding so much and allow some of that to spread out some more, they wouldn't need to build a bunker. Because what life is that where the world collapses and you have to hide in a bunker in New Zealand for the rest of your life? Like, why would you want that to be the reality you live in? But that's what they're choosing, which is crazy.
Sure. Well, Dream Hoarders also talks about how in the current system we live in, that it is possible, or at least the idealism is that it's possible to move up a rung into a different class.
Yeah.
But for lower income, we have really removed the safety net.
Yeah.
So what they're trying to do is they're trying to reinforce the safety net so that they never become poor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is like really like what it is.
Yeah.
Is they're trying to make sure that like, because the whole idea is that if you fall out of the 5%, someone else is in your 5% slot now.
Yeah.
Right? But they're just trying to make it sure that the top 10% no one moves out of, which also, by the way, the top 10% is people who earn over $100,000 a year, which is crazy because people think the top 10% is way more than that. It's not. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. And then the last reason she gives is tainted wealth and character harms. And so tainted wealth, you can kind of figure out what that is. It is
tainted wealth.
It is not like a rule that everybody who accumulates massive amount of wealth comes from tainted means, but it is pretty common that somewhere along the line there is something that happened that was harmful to others that they used to acquire massive wealth. We were talking at lunch. Meta just lost a massive lawsuit that said that they were intentionally addicting people.
Yes.
And they were, well, I should say they were negligent in the fact that their algorithms are addictive to people.
No, they were intentionally making it like, I mean, sure, you want to use all the legalese you want, but they were intentionally making their product addictive. They knew it was addictive and they were doing that. And also the thing like in 2009 when they fudged the numbers on video views to get all these people to put their videos on Facebook, turns out they were 10xing those views. So a video that showed 2 million views was really only getting 200,000 views. And that's criminal.
Yeah.
But here's what happens. I actually made a great analogy at lunch. I'm going to make it again here. Is that they just pay the fine. And they start to build the fine into their operating expenses. It'd be like if I have a bus company and I want to make sure that my buses run the fastest in the city. So my buses run 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. And I just factor in the $200 speeding tickets. I go, every once in a while I'm going to get caught with a speeding ticket, but for the most part I'm not, and I'm going to keep moving, and we're going to make that up in
and the profits
in revenue because I can move so much faster than the other buses. And so I'll just factor in speeding tickets so that I can keep moving faster than the buses.
And all the buses that follow the laws go out of business because of you.
And then we just end up with
raise your prices.
And then we just end up with a wildly unsafe bus system. And we go, why are the buses so fast and they keep hitting people and there's no way to slow? Well, what do you want to slow them down? And that was a crash out, and I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I said I wasn't going to do it. Here, let me cash you back out. I'll cash and release you real quick. And so she says that this is done by legitimately immoral or sometimes unintentionally immoral means to gain wealth.
Of course.
And then, or built on the back of other historical injustices. The success that they found was only possible because of the success of another person who was immoral. Or aggressive tax avoidance or actual evasion. She makes an interesting statement that so much of tax avoidance right now that is legal tax avoidance was illegal 50 years ago. And so just because the laws have changed, which remember, they paid to change the laws, doesn't mean that it's okay for them to evade paying these taxes. It just means that they found a way to make it okay legally, found a way to make it so they can get away with it. So she says that typically someone who acquires this much wealth probably tax avoided at some point along the line, if not actively is tax avoiding right now. And that is tainted wealth. The other side of this that's really interesting, she says that this is actually very harmful to the wealthy people themselves. And she says that what happens is that it negatively affects their character and the well-being of themselves because having that much wealth inflates their egos, makes them think that they are more valuable than other people, and leads to irrational anxieties that somehow they're going to lose all of this or someone's going to try to take it from them. Also, it leads to social isolation because they cannot relate to anybody else because so few people are at the level and have the type of problems that they have.
You also start to be like, all of my relationships are fake because everyone's trying to just get money. Even your kids are trying to figure out which one of them is going to get the money. Like, of course. There's a reason that they're all addicted to that's substances and stuff.
Well, she was going to say it becomes an addiction in and of itself, acquiring more wealth. And they become addicted to seeing that number go up in their net worth. And so this thing has a negative impact on their own well-being too. Not just the well-being of everyone else. And so this is her whole argument of like morally why this shouldn't be a thing. She says that this is bad for society and is bad for the people who acquire it. And what's interesting is at the end of the book, she kind of starts to outline how she thinks this should work. And she makes a very interesting statement where she's like, look, I'm not anti-capitalist. I think capitalism is a good thing. And I think capitalism is like one of the best.
And I hope that's clear in our rants and our crash outs too. Like, I'm not advocating that we do the unregulated state of capitalism we currently exist in that sucks. That's kind of what we're talking about with the whole bus analogy, right? That's where we're at. But that doesn't mean I'm like, let's just get rid of buses. Let's just get rid of society. If that's your takeaway, I'm not trying to be mean. That's a dumb. You know?
And so she also illustrates, she says, and also like, I recognize that the world I am painting, the alternate world I'm painting is far away and hard to achieve. And we should not say, because this is so difficult to achieve, we shouldn't try in some way to get towards there. She said that the people who, when the United States overturned slavery, there was still a lot of big problems. There still are a lot of big problems that tie back to that today. But she says that wasn't a reason to not undo slavery. Like these are things that we need to take the steps towards the moral right, even if it's a long road and even if we're not able to move as far as we want to move. And so she says we should take some steps. And so what she argues is that there should be a moral top line where we say ethically, morally, this is the top line of wealth that anyone should acquire. And then there should be a political top line where this is something that government should actually enforce. And so the moral top line, which is kind of crazy, she says the moral top line is €1 million. Is the
total net worth?
Total net worth, which is crazy. And she sets that number for a lot of reasons, but the biggest reason, she did a lot of research. She did this big study by polling.
That's a lot lower than I thought it was going to be honest.
Yeah. She did this big study by polling a lot of people that showed these lifestyles of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And she basically said who has too much. And she basically took the mean of what everybody said, and that was at €1 million net worth. She also looked at the impact of that hoarding of wealth and what that takes away from the rest of society in terms of how many resources are available.
Right.
And so that's where she set that number.
That's pretty crazy.
That's interesting to me because I think that that's highly subjective, because $1 million net worth in Kansas City is a pretty decent life. $1 million net worth in Los Angeles is very different.
Right.
And so I do think like there's a little bit of, you got to be able to have some variance there. The political number she sets though is 10 million euros. And she says that by basically saying like, I took that up by an exponent and by exponentially and said, okay, this is the number where like society should
I actually am a little bummed because I do think that the rest of these points were super valid, but I do think that this ending here is a little elementary, is a little bit like...
What do you mean?
Because I mean, for the exact same that you just said of like $1 million here is different than $1 million there.
Oh, I do agree.
And if she came to it just by polling people,
it wasn't just that. It wasn't just that.
I understand, but I'm saying like,
and I will say she did
for how well thought out the other points were. I'm disappointed by how not well thought out that is.
She did mention that these numbers are numbers that probably need to be reevaluated regularly because the economy changes, and because of like what is considered a good life changes.
Right.
And so these numbers need to be consistent. Like they need to be mobile. But the way she says the government could enforce these things, and this is crazy, she says that once someone enters a 10 million net worth, they should just have 100% tax, which is crazy. And so she's like, obviously no one would go for that. Like it'd be nearly impossible to get someone to do that. But she said, this is what I think the ethical ideal is that scenario, and we figure out how we can get closer to that. And so there have been some critiques of it. The biggest critique is like the good life. Like, how do you define what the good life is?
Right.
How do you find that number? And that's how.
And then the people are always like, well, how are they motivated? You also don't understand. You also don't understand that there stops being a moment where the money is what motivates you and it becomes the power and influence.
Yeah.
And if we create a system where the power and influence aren't connected to the money, then it's different.
Somebody actually made the argument that is one of the flaws of this system.
Right.
Because you take the money out and like, yeah, that helps, but like people will still find a way to social hierarchy and make themselves better than. And so they're like, this doesn't actually solve the root problem here.
Right.
This is a symptom of a bigger problem is what this argument was, which is interesting. But yeah, to your point, whenever I hear that, my first thought is the Green Bay Packers. Because do you know this?
Oh, I know why. Yeah, go. Yeah, don't even worry about it.
Do you know this?
My first thought is the Green Bay Packers.
No, listen. I hate the Green Bay Packers a lot, but I will say their structure, like their corporate structure, is really interesting because they are a nonprofit corporation. Nobody owns the Packers. There's not an individual that owns the Packers. When they were founded, they sold shares to the city of Green Bay, and now it's sold worldwide. But they are a collective of shareholders. And what's really interesting about that is the shares don't pay a dividend. They can't accrue, like they can't go up. They're non-transferable. And so they're kind of show shares. And so what the team does whenever they need to raise money, they sell more shares. And so in 2022 was the last time they did this. They raised $93 million by selling shares of the company for $300 a piece. And fans bought them, and they raised $93 million doing that. And when at the end of every season, nobody takes a profit. It goes into the team's fund, and they use that to grow the team and to
Who manages the fund?
So there's a board, there's a corporate structure, there's people who lead that, but nobody is profiting hugely off of the people have salaries, but nobody is taking profits out of the Green Bay Packers.
Sounds like communism. The Green Bay Packers are communists, is what I'm learning.
And so
Freaking
but
commies.
what I'm saying there is nobody there has that financial motivation of like, oh, this needs to be successful so I can make $3 billion at the end of this year.
Yeah.
Like, they just want the team to do well. And that's all that they need. Which is crazy.
Well, you can buy a share of our podcast by joining us on Patreon. That's your way of buying a share. And then you can also listen to next week's episode right now by joining us there, you know? And then if you liked this episode, go listen to Ida Wood, who was a rich person.
there
and
you go.
she, speaking of hoarding, she physically hoarded her wealth and like hid it around her house, which was crazy. So fiddle off, and we'll see you next week. And no crash outs.
No crash outs.
We kind of did it.
Yeah, we did good. I'm proud of you.
No.
He's going to crash out after this. We're going to turn the cameras off and he's going to lose it.